Thank you for being here with all of us today. So, the first question that I would like for all of you is to share with everyone your background, what you're doing now, and what cool things you have done.
Cool things you've done. Alright, so I guess to clarify this is not Shark Tank, right? So it's not about us giving out money at the end of this session. So it's great, and we thank Anna for having us here. It's great to see such a big crowd of people here. Although when we were just discussing this as we were looking at the crowd, although it's the financial career guide for women, I think there's a lot more men here than women. So I'm not sure if it's because the men thought that there was a lot of women here, like a typical date night, or the women sort of sent you here to sort of take notes first.
I think there's a Selena Gomez concept in it.
Okay, well, evening everyone. So I'm the founder with 1823 Ventures. So to give you a bit of a background about myself, I used to be so I guess similar to a lot of you, I started with a day job. I was a investment banker covering the financial sector, doing M&A. I started off my career in London, then moved to Hong Kong, and then finally moved back to Singapore. So then for the last 2 years, I've been involved in venture capital. And I think this is a very interesting time to be in the venture capital space. And we're all in the right place. I think all of you would have heard a lot of the news about Singapore being the Silicon Valley of the East. You see a lot of government-sponsored programs to fund startups and to support startups. And I think you also see that there's a lot of interested and very experienced investors in the space as well. So I think all of us, those of you who want to start a business in Singapore and have a startup, I think you are in the right place and this is the right time. So today, hopefully we'll be able to share with you a bit of our experiences from dealing with many of the startups. Some have actually gone on to do very well. And I'm open to questions as to and I'm looking forward to answering questions on what we look for and what kind of ideas you think are hot in the market right now. I'll pass you on to Ronnie.
Hi everyone. Good evening. Yeah, my name is Ronnie. I run a early stage tech investment company called InQvest. I again similarly started my career in Accenture, very boring. So spent some time there in technology. Then I got bored. I left and I set up my own sort of startup, fintech actually, and then to get lucky, sold it to a listed company. So since then, I've never looked back. I've always been involved in startups, helping startups, founding my own startups, and most recently sort of set up a fund. Well, actually, it's not a fund per se, but a group of angel investors and that invest in early stage tech companies. So we also partner with the Singapore government through National Research Foundation, where we co-invest with them. We've done about 15 investments in the last sort of 3 to 5 years. Some of the early investments, companies like Ribbons, I don't know Ribbons, Chope, Vanity, Sinara Systems, and a combination of B2B, B2C, and now B2B2C. So yeah, so happy to chat with any of you guys. I've been got a bit of a veteran in this business, but still, trying to stay current and yeah, continue to do quite a few investments. We've done, yeah, continue to focus in doing a lot more investments in the coming years.
Hi, Kim Wise. Hesitating to use the word veteran, but by Ronnie, I'm also a veteran in the industry. I've been almost an entrepreneur since generation 1 of the internet revolution across Southeast Asia. Typical entrepreneurial story. I quit my day job, become an entrepreneur, build companies. I've built about half a dozen of companies so far. Took 4 of them to public market. Since then, I've been investing last 6 years or so. Always see myself as an entrepreneur. It's always fun to build companies. Less fun to be investor writing out check. There are moments where you wish you are not writing checks and be receiving checks. but it's been a great journey. I think the whole ecosystem is been um, it's been very active last couple of years. I see a lot of opportunities for both entrepreneurs and investors. I run Fatfish Internet Group. We are basically a early stage investor and venture builder.
Okay, thank you. The first question I have, which is, when should startups raise capital and how can they time it right? What are some of the milestones that you look for and to hit to make sure that they have a successful raise?
Should I start? Okay.
Sure.
I think the key operative question is when should you raise capital, right? And I think the advice that I think all of us give you is when you raise capital, you're talking about giving away equity in your company and having a shareholder who's going to have a lot of demands on you. So the very general advice that I would give everyone is hold out for as long as you can and raise money only when you absolutely have to. Because I guess let's remind ourselves of what businesses were like in the days before there was tech startups and before there was VCs as they were so prevalent. People sort of borrowed money from friends and family. They open a shop, they produce something, they sell something, they reinvest the money and build a business. Did they go out there and have Series A, B, C, D, E, F? No, right? Did they think of IPO? No. Because a lot of them managed to build conglomerates and empires, just building things and selling things, and no one actually had to go and look for external money. So in terms of timing, it's really a graduation from being someone with the idea to someone who is going to be executing the idea, to then becoming a business person, and then sort of determining what funding do you need to take this business to the next stage. So it's a journey. So therefore, that is my advice to everyone here. There are many businesses that you have, and you may not even need $100,000. You could maybe only need $10,000. And if you've been working forward, you've been saving, why don't you think of the money that you have in the bank first, and friends and family, before you reach outside of this circle to raise external funding?
Yeah, I would tend definitely to agree as well. Try to hold out for as long as possible until you really get your product or service up and running. You've actually validated it, because so then you can actually sort of command a little bit of a higher valuation. You don't want to give up too much earlier on. So there's no hard and fast rule when.
No, I would say that because of that, female founders would have an advantage because they stand out better. But comes down to equality. It's not just about the founder, right? It's about the product, the team, the vision. So I think typically, if you are given a choice, I think most investors would say a balanced male-female team would be ideal. I've not seen. I think all female team is rare. I've not come across that many. Balanced team, I think, would be ideal.
Ronnie and Kevin.
No, I mean, it's all about capability. So whether you're male or female, if the vision and the is clear, it doesn't really. Oh, see, it's cut off. Censored, yeah. To us, I don't think my partner's my partner's a woman. She was one of the founders of Valueware. She's DEB, so she brings a great perspective as well. So I think it complements. So I'm at 30,000 feet. She's at 3,000 feet, but we swap, right? So it's we don't have any preference.
Kevin?
Okay. I think gender doesn't matter. It's really about capability. So when we talk about having a lady on a team, right, it's what capabilities does she bring? And maybe inherently there are certain qualities in ladies that guys don't have. But at the same time, if you're talking about startups and tech, remember, right, that it's actually a very tough journey. So imagine if you guys have been doing this for 6 months, you're running out of money, you have to sleep in the office. would a lady be okay with that, sleeping in the office and roughing it up? I think the general consensus has been that, guys, this guy is quite cool because we have all been army, we've slept out in the open, so it's okay to sleep on the floor and under your desk. So, but I mean, jokes aside, I don't think there really is a differentiation. There's any difference between an all-male or an all-female founder group. And in fact, we would welcome more females to come and join the startup ecosystem, because I think that's seriously lacking at the moment.
What are some of the typical companies raising money now? I mean, I know fintech is hot, but are there any others that you're looking at? Also, if I'm a startup and I approach you, what would you minimally expect me to have? Like a pitch deck, financial models, or can I just call you and say, hey, I want to have coffee with you?
Okay, so, well, the first question, right? So what are we looking at right now? I think it's very diverse. A lot of people are coming out from their day jobs because they see problems in their day jobs, and this could be in fintech, this could be in F&B, and it could be actually be very low tech kind of a business. It doesn't have to be an e-commerce business that's going to have 5 million users in the next 3 months. It could be something very small, logistics, supply chain. It could be anything. So I don't have a definitive answer for you. But if a pretty lady like Anna emails me and says, I would like to have coffee with you, and I check out her LinkedIn profile, it's like, oh, she knows there's good education, she knows that she's got good employment history, and she's got a good idea. Yeah, like why would you turn that down, right? I think all of us find it hard to turn it down.
Will you say that about a guy? If a guy with a similar history and similar job and similar nice photo, are you sure you're going to say that?
No, you put it I think I might have put myself in a dangerous position. I think it's a good time to pass the mic over to Robbie.
What was the question again?
Okay, the question
Yes, of course, absolutely.
The question is, what are some of the companies that are raising money that you're seeing, and also how can they approach you to raise money? What should they minimally have, like a business plan, financial modeling, a pitch deck?
Yeah, all of the above, right? And ideally customers, ideally a product, and I guess depends, different. I mean, we invest typically pre-A and or a little bit earlier. So yeah, we do look for a certain amount of traction, right, customer. But yeah, so minimally they must have those key things. And I mentioned a bit earlier also, a good team with a strong understanding of the various metrics, right, the various business levers. Right, if I did this turned out, I did that, and so to get a good impression that they understand how the business ticks, and if this were to happen, that they could, immediately sort of steer the company in the right direction. So that, to us, is what we kind of look for, and that typically, that's why we look at the founder more than the team.
In terms of what are startups getting funded and investors are looking at, I think it's very broad. I think simply because as more and more people are connected to the phone or the internet, the habit of relying on that connection to do your daily routine gets larger and larger, and a lot more businesses online become viable. So you think about it, so what do we do on our daily life? F&B, finance, transport. So all these areas are now feasible to be a connected business. So I think it's really very broad. But I would probably say what are areas that people don't invest in. There are a few areas that I don't think people are investing in, strangely, like entertainment, night scene. Right? I've seen a fair bit of people trying to do apps for clubbing scene, for bars, and it just somehow investors are not investing, and somehow it's never compelling enough for users to adopt them as well. So that's just probably one of the areas that I think has been excluded from investment. would I entertain someone to call me out and say let's have coffee? I would minimally need a simple pitch deck. I think that's kind of where you cut off from serious would-be entrepreneur, for me at least, to someone just casually having an idea, having tested it. At least a pitch deck is somewhat a commitment and say I have an idea, I work on it, and I'm ready to show the world my idea to start the journey.
Okay, going back, what are strategic investors? How do they help entrepreneurs? Okay, for yourself, how do you what do you provide to the startups that you invest in, like office space, your network, maybe more funding in the future?
I think a strategic investor would be any typically organization or individual who has a domain knowledge of a particular domain that the company, the startup is working on. In the case of fintech, for example, would be financial group, financial conglomerate, so on and so forth. I think it's great to have strategic investor, but may not usually work out well. I think largely also because some organization is large and it's not easy for them to mobilize resources within the organization to help a startup outside of the organization. So case in point is a friend of mine received an investment from a telco strategy with what he does, and 6 months, 1 year down the road, he found out that it's far more difficult to work with the telco itself than its competitor. Right? So it's just largely the red tape, a large organization, and it's not easy to sell even if within the organization, even if they are a shareholder. So that's kind of the strategic investor side. For ourselves, we try to add value by helping companies to look at all important areas for a startup. I would term it as marketing, product development, funding. Those 3 areas, I think, largely will be some areas that we help out in.
So I think for us, I mean, being all sort of former entrepreneurs, we also understand a lot of the pains and issues that entrepreneurs go through. So we try to make it, try to provide as much help as possible. To us, I think the key ones, aside from funding, is access to customers, access to business partners, so that the startup can get to that validation point sooner rather than later, or to demonstrate the ability to scale sooner rather than later. So, you know, for us, veteran or pioneers in the industry, we do have a pretty extensive network, and I think that you know, helps the startups a lot, especially those first time or second time, and really need access to not just the market here in Singapore but overseas as well. So you want to look for you know, partners or strategic investors that can actually help you open those markets, or at least get those introductions. We also provide access to a lot of the centralized sort of administration, accounts, legal. We have co-working space as well. So we provide that to our startups as well as to overseas startups who want to come into Asia and expand. So yeah, we provide a fair amount of assistance and help. So this is a challenge for us, because as investors, sometimes we don't have as much time as we would like to spend with the startups. So this is where we've been trying to put together a model where we can create a platform so that experienced entrepreneurs or corporate guys or retired people can basically come in and help startups either on a one-on-one basis or you know, on a more regular basis to really help the startups you know, with the domain, with the product, with the digital marketing, and access to market. So these are some things that we try to provide as far as possible, and fundraising, subsequent fundraising as well.
It's good that we raised the point about strategic investors and distinguishing it from financial investors and strategic investors. Now, in a corporate world, it makes a lot of sense to differentiate the two because a financial investor is a passive investor. He just wants to put in money and wait for his returns to come in. Whereas a strategic investor has vested interest to help you develop your business, introduce customers to you, and share resources. So that's in the corporate world, right? If you're a insurance company and you have a bank come and work with you, that could be a strategic investor. But here, if we are talking about, I'm sure most of the people in the room here are starting a smaller scale business where it is very unlikely that you get a corporate investor coming on day one. So, but it doesn't mean that you can't get a corporate to get involved in your business. So for example, you see there are a lot of accelerators out there right now being run by banks, being run by insurance companies, being run by Konica Minolta, health companies, so on and so forth. So it's not, you're looking, when you think of your strategy of fundraising, also think of your overall, how are you going to build your network of your business partners. So don't just limit yourself of thinking, DBS will never invest in my business today. Your participation in their accelerator program is actually indirectly an investment in your business, and that opens up the same kind of network that you would have received if someone like DBS had invested in you. So bear that in mind. Now, in terms of, but when you're dealing with investors, you're dealing with individuals, you should still also look at them and think, does this person have 20 years in the internet business? Does this person have 20 years as a doctor and he knows all the medical professionals in Singapore? So think about it as well. So you do have strategic investors at the individual level, and I know we've seen heard a lot of pitches where they say, actually we're not interested. Startups will come to us and say, actually we're not interested in money. We're looking for people who can bring value to our business. That's a very nice starting point. It's very nice to have, but always bear in mind, you are a startup, and if you're about to develop a business, the first thing that you need, actually, the most important thing is money. So if you don't get a strategic investor, it's nice to sort of position it as a strategic investment at first, but at the end of the day, if someone's going to give you money, please don't ask him, can you please show me your credentials? I think work with him and sort of say, yes, what can you help me with, but you know what, can I have the check first, right? So don't dwell too much on the strategic part.
So what are some of the companies that you have invested in, your company has invested in, and why do they make the cut?
I think I go back to, why do they make the cut? I think it goes back to the point of the founders. So maybe I'll give the, one example is we invested in a company called Swarmax. So Swarmax is a drones industry company. They're actually building a docking station for drones. I'll give you 3 reasons why we invested in them, and we actually invested at a very, very early stage before they started operations. Number one, the founder was involved in a drone startup beforehand, so he actually came with the domain knowledge. Then number 2, when he presented to us, he had a very clear vision as to what the product would be, where the problem was, and the sort of potential customers that he'd been speaking to. So although he had not got the product yet, he had taken a step forward and started speaking to potential customers, and he was telling us the needs that these potential customers had. And then lastly, he had already also been to the point, right, where if you have a good idea, people will naturally be drawn to your idea and want to work together with you. So he had already found 2 other people, a CTO and a CEO, to work together with him. So when you put all those pieces together, us as investors, we get the confidence that, number one, you are the driver of the company, so there's nothing wrong with being the solo founder who came up with everything first, but you got people to buy into your vision and to be able to step in for you should you one day fall ill or not be able to come to work. I know that there are 2 other people or a group of other people in the company that we can rely on to keep the business going. Because as much as we love to support individuals and we do celebrate the sort of the ingeniousness of people who come up with great ideas, the fact is you have to look at it from our perspective, because we are business people. If we are investing and it's just on that one person, that's very, very high risk investment. So it's always more comforting and easier for us to bring to our investment committee when we have key man risk sort of mitigated, and we can say that there's actually intellectual property lies with other people and it's not just on one person.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess the last few companies we invested, again, back to it was the founders and the team and the ability to communicate the size of the market, the gap, the problems, I guess, that they were trying to solve, and to actually demonstrate that they had an idea or product that was at least starting to solve that problem, right? And again, demonstrating that they had the ability, maybe not the experience, but the ability to take that first step, right? And demonstrate that they managed to get some initial headway. So again, I mean, investing is sometimes, you know, as some older gentleman once told me, when you invested, you must be in the lottery business, because it is technically very much like that. But you know what we try to do. So you know, I tell our staff, I think, well, it's a lot about luck. You're getting to you're raising your next round, getting to exit. A lot of it is luck, right? And but getting to be lucky, getting to a position where luck can make a difference. Now that's skill, right? And that's hard work, and that's you know, and those are the levers and how you get there. So that's kind of what we look for. And the last few companies we invested all sort of demonstrate. I think, you know, the other thing we also try to do is also sound out other later stage investors. So our customer is the Series A, Series B investors, right? So typically, even before we make an investment, we try and, you know, there's a buzzword, there's a cliche, right? Start with the end in mind, right? So what we try to do also is to validate that we are able to then pass this investment on to the next investor, right? And for him to say, well, if these guys hit these metrics and achieve these kind of numbers, would you, well, they'll never commit to investing, but would you be serious in terms of looking at this? And say, yeah, we like this space, we like this team. If they can hit those numbers, we'd be open, right? Then we say, okay, well, that adds to us another area of validation, at least in our business, right? And helps, it's all about reducing the risk, increasing the chance of success, and reducing the risk of failure. That's the game of the lottery, in a way, right? Managed lottery, sort of counting cards.
Anything to add?
No, I think
Okay.
it's very well.
What are your honest expectations after you make an investment?
I just want to laugh my way to the bank.
IPO.
I think ideally most investors want to wait for exit and have a good exit. I think Singapore is also a bit unique. A lot of people think that investors should not be too exit focused. If you're not the government of Singapore and you're putting money into a company, what are you hoping to get? So I think by definition, investors are people who put in money into a company and they expect return. And that return has to be significant enough so that it justifies the risk. A lot of people somehow, I find strange, they don't understand that. So investors are professional organizations, like at least a lot of them, even angel investors, right? They invest, they take a big risk. And a lot of people are familiar with the 80-20 rule. So in terms of investing in, especially tech startups, most people expect 80% of their investments to fail. So it's a very high risk. 20% successful, you have to give good returns. So I, for one, we don't need to exit tomorrow, but it's always something that, as a responsible investor, you have to think about what's the exit plan. So if the founders and the team, the management team know what to do, build value, geared towards exit, whatever the horizon will be, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, then investors, I think, naturally will be a lot more relaxed. If investors see potential to help, I think most investors would want to value add and help. It's just a degree of how much time and effort an investor could spend with a particular company.
I think one of our expectations is really, and I think that's important, is just as running a startup, you want to make sure your entire team is aligned to your objectives of growing the company, right? And recently I've seen some very good entrepreneurs, create workshops and make sure the entire team is focused in achieving their metrics. And similarly, for a good entrepreneur, you also want to align your objectives with the investors' objectives, right? So again, another good trait of an entrepreneur is, okay, well, what are the investors' objectives and how do I make sure that those are aligned, right? And so I would expect to see that in terms of some kind of communications and then to reach out. So good entrepreneurs also publish or they send an email either quarterly or even bi-monthly to update investors on the progress of the company in terms of the metrics that they aligned, as well as, well, help, reaching out for help. Well, how else can an investor help me, right? I need introductions, I need help, and on digital marketing, I need help to get more customers, I need more money, right? And never surprise your investors, right? Always try to communicate as much as you can, and that can only come from good upfront alignment of the investor as well as the entrepreneur, the startup. So these are some of the things, not so easy, but over time we try to communicate that to investors. So those are some of our expectations, right? So to me, I mean, even if the startup doesn't end up well, these are very invaluable lessons that you bring on to hopefully to your next startup and your next startup. And on the exit focus, I think exit is always a good thing, even, right, because that helps the entire ecosystem as well. And I think that's something that I'm trying to, to inculcate into all levels of the ecosystem here, right, from all the various stakeholders. Exits are good, and Singapore needs a lot more exits, right? And so go out there, build companies, and exit, right, and come back and contribute back to the ecosystem, because only upon you exiting will other entrepreneurs say, hey, he can do it, alamak, I also can, right? And so you need to do it across all parts of the ecosystem, from the research guys that are building your professors. And that's to me, is one of the differences between a valley type ecosystem and the current ecosystem here, right? So I think there's some ways to go, but I think exit pays, to me, some may or may not agree, I think that plays a big part.
Ronnie, I'll just add one more point. So Ronnie made a good point. I'll just add to that, which is, as you invest, once you have an investor on board, right, he's actually your business partner. So you have to work together on some joint goals. And then us as the investor, we know that your cash balance is running down day by day, and at some point you run out of money. And that's where Ronnie made a good point, where we're trying to sell it to the next set of investors. So we have to agree that the next set of investor, if he's looking for 1,000 customers, your plan should be try to get 1,000 customers on board. Founders may sometimes have a different idea, right? Let's put more features onto the product, let's do more this on the product, let's delay launch about 2 more months so I can put this on. But we have to sort of work together with you, because it's now a joint enterprise. It's no longer by yourself, you no longer call the shots. We have to think about the company as a whole, and as investors, we also have an interest to make sure that you can move on to the next stage.
Last question, what do you think is lacking in the Singapore startup ecosystem?
Exit. Female founders.
And websites that help female founders.
Everything. I think we wish we could have more funding, more exits, more entrepreneurs, more talents here. I think those would be all wish lists for everyone in the system.
Okay, so thank you so much for your time. We'll open the floor for any questions. Sure.
One major issue almost all startups face is client acquisition. And we realize that in Singapore, in many cases, market being quite constrained or small, volume-wise, you may have to have some sort of plan B for further expansion. What is your suggestion when particular venture is looking at the customer or client acquisition, and they are feeling that the Singapore market is not getting the right traction to them.
Well, then I think you've your business plan or your product is flawed, right? So if you can't get customers, then I think there's an issue. That's because the market's too small. I find that hard to believe, right? That it's then maybe your product is not designed for the Singapore market. So maybe you should either change the product or change your location, right? So back to that's you want to get to that decision point sooner rather than later, right? So as an investor, and it's good that, but you need to take a very, very good hard look at what you're offering, the market, because if you are going and pitching to customers and they're not buying, then there's several things wrong, right? And so. Yeah.
Any other question?
Sorry, I got two questions. Number one is, how do you go about finding investors, angel investors? And number two is that, in the context, I'm now also seeking funding, and I'm a first-time startup, solo founder also. I'm a guy, so maybe I don't know whether that makes a difference. But I just want to know,
Make sure you have a nice LinkedIn.
I don't know, how do you price the amount of equity that you're going to give the angel investor or the VC? Like, they're going to ask me, so how much do you want for 100%? And usually I'll just plug a number from the and say, okay, maybe 200K, something. So is there a right method that you price the equity, or how do you do it?
Yeah, I'll try to give it a shot, but yeah. This is again to the business plan and model, right? So, we would expect that you've gone through and thought through exactly what product, what market, and how much you need, right? And if that's, and say you need 200,000 or work out 200,000 or 300,000 that you need to launch this business, then it depends on at what stage you're at. If you've really kind of gotten a simple pilot and really started to, you've gotten 3 or 4 sort of pilot customers, to sort of validate. So then that moves you further down, further up, right? So for us as investors, we definitely will not want to take a majority stake, right? So we typically take a minority stake, right? But depending on a lot of things, right? Is this a first-time startup? How far down the path are you in terms of, are you just an idea? Are you just a, and that will typically affect the valuation, right? How much you want to give up, right? So this is a good, and I would suggest go out and talk to as many angel investors and investors, and just go and talk and do almost a trial and error, because, right? And then go and talk to different people, because different investors and different accelerators, or have different value add and stuff like that. So I think there's a whole network. You can go, there's so many different resources, I think, to go and talk to different types of investors, right? Come to Block 79, 71, just walk around, hang out at Timber Plus and say, are you an investor? Right? And then practice your elevator pitch, right? And go and talk to other entrepreneurs. Hey, who never give money one? Always give money one. Aussie business plan also give money. Friends, families, and some investors. But so go. There is no hard and fast rule, and you'll find it's a lot of it is chemistry, and sometimes investors say, oh, wow, this one maybe fits into my existing, can link in with, or rather link up with some of my other portfolio companies, and because that rarely happens. But so do your homework as well. Go and look at the investor. This one, and then pretend you don't know. Oh yeah, you're in fashion. Oh, you do fashion. Oh okay, yeah, ribbons. Yeah, I don't know, right? And then do some research, right? So just rock up to some guy and say, hey, can I have some money, right? So yeah, I've seen it all. Okay. No, I agree with Ronnie's thing. So
Let me know as well.
there's a lot of meetups and events right now where you as a startup can go and mingle, because then you'll have investors and startups at the same place where you can learn from each other and also approach startups and approach investors. And your degree of proactiveness also shows something about your attitude and your enthusiasm and eagerness to run your business. And I think absolutely. So I've been approached just like walking along in Tech in Asia. Someone just came up to me and said, "Can I steal 5 minutes of your time?" So that's why sometimes you see us when we're at this fest, we turn our badge over so that no one knows that we're investors. But that's where your elevator pitch is most important, because imagine someone comes to you, you probably only have 15 seconds to say, "Here's what I want to do and here's what I'm looking for." You have 15 seconds to do that. If someone came up to me and says, "Did you know?" and he goes on and talks for 10 seconds and says, would you think the world would be a better place if someone could do this, I would sort of lose interest. So think of the way you position yourself and grab the guy's attention fast and correct. The thing is, you have to do the rounds and do your circuits and find out who could be a right investor for you, because as much as you never know, in the startup space, we don't advertise everything that we cannot advertise everything that we're interested in on our website or on our LinkedIn profile, so you just have to take a chance.
To that?
I think that's just to add on. I think a lot of entrepreneurs see investors or angel investors, in particular your case, as a person who sits across the table and negotiate with you. So it's a lot of people see this as zero-sum game. Like, if I get more, he should lose more. If he wins more, I'll be losing a lot more. So I think it shouldn't be that case. You should see yourself, after all, an angel investor is going to be your partner. You should see that person as a person who will be sitting next to you side by side, not across the table. And so for me, then it's always a question of, you should ask yourself, if I were to be the investor, what would I be looking at? Right? So how much, and these are especially angel investors, right? These are typically hard-earned money, unless it's someone from A1 Facebook, of. So these are typically hard-earned money. So you want to be fair to your angel investors. Like, if he's taking the risk, believing in you, very early stage, taking a lot of risks, how should he be compensated? Factoring various rounds of funding you may need down the road. I think funding is something that is going to be very difficult to avoid in the current climate, because all the startups have raised money and they are spending it. So you probably see yourself, any startup, any founders probably see yourself as raising a couple of rounds, right? So dilution will kick in, you work out, and how do you want your angel investor, the guy who believes in you day one onwards, to be compensated when you are successful, right? Rather than seeing it as, here's a sucker, take as little as equity as possible, write me a big check. And if you're a serious entrepreneur, chances are you will not look at doing this one time. You will always look at doing it again and again. Most people in the tech industry will always come back and do it again and again. So you want to have good partners that you can work with in your next startup. So your angel investor will naturally be among those that you will want to work with for long term.
Yeah, Carol?
Can you guys hear me? Okay, so I have a question, and to answer your last question to everybody, what I wish Singapore had more of is people, because the problem with having a startup in Singapore is that no investor wants to invest in you unless you can prove you can scale throughout Southeast Asia. But that's very limiting when you have either it's not a platform or an aggregator or a marketplace, but a very intensive inventory-based or service-based startup. It's much harder to scale throughout a fragmented market like this. Whereas, my business, shameless plug, we do dress rentals, which is the $500 million company in the US. So it's obviously a proven model, and I've been crushing it here for the last year. But then my question, every question I get from VCs is like, okay, well, how are you going to bring it throughout Southeast Asia, right? And my competitor in Hong Kong just got funded by Alibaba because they're accessing China. So it's not as easy because it's, I can't really ship my inventory cross border. So what's your advice to startups that are not so easily transferable cross-border? Because you said there's like kind of like a market product business fit. I mean, I want to stay in Singapore, I love it, but I feel like if I can't scale this business throughout Indonesia and Vietnam easily, then I either need to change my business or move to India or something. So, what's your advice?
I think that's an inherent problem for Southeast Asia. We always like to see it as a market with 600 million people, I think, but it's not. It's very fragmented, and well, it's not strange, but I think it's just a bit difficult for people who have no experience to believe in it. Even just going across to your nearest market, Singapore to Malaysia, itself is challenging. It's a whole set of different environment, culture, people you deal with. Indonesia, Thailand, as you go further away from your current market, you see the challenges increase by manifold. I've not seen that many startups who are readily scaling across the region. It's not easy. And it has to be a very systematic approach, one market at a time. And every market you go into, if you don't have a partner who's familiar with the market, you definitely pay a lot of tuition fee in terms of cost and time and effort to learn. I think that's true generally. I think in particular, I feel I'm a bit more qualified to say that because I spent a lot of time across the region. I spent almost equal time in places like Malaysia, Indonesia. I built companies there. I work with big, small companies in those markets. Even for me, it's not easy after spending the last 10 years across the regional market. And I've not even touched Thailand, Vietnam yet, which is a market that is totally alien to me. Right? So it's not easy. Yeah, moving to India may be not a bad idea. But I think Southeast Asia, that's the set of challenges that you have to face. And one particular thing that I like to encourage companies to look at more than anything else is actually M&A. Right? If you are market share in a new market, it's going to take you 2 years, 3 years, but you have a competitor in that market that you can merge with, acquire, come in ready market share, you save yourself 2 3 years of effort. There's just no shortcut to it in the way I see it.
Yeah, and there are a couple of ways of looking at this, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, but I mean, I look at it glass half empty, half full, right? I think while, yes, it is a massively fragmented market, it also a massive barrier to other startups who want to come into Southeast Asia. So, right, and you see most Singapore entrepreneurs or successful Singapore or Malaysian entrepreneurs, they've all had to build their companies across Southeast Asia. So it's almost a given, right? So they start already with a plan. So this comes back to, as an entrepreneur, you realize, yeah, it is very difficult to scale across Southeast Asia. Well, that's a skill set that you need, right? Then you start looking for partners who have done that before, who've built sales teams, that have built startups and know if you go to Indonesia, you need to talk to these guys, and these guys don't trust these guys, and then you go to Malaysia, it's this way, Malaysia is this way, definitely this way. At Thailand, you know, and every market is different. So I see that people come and say, oh, how do you go and build, you know, but we've all built companies and we know we have to do it, and we all learn the hard way. But these are the kind of gaps that you realize very quickly that you don't have and need to have in your team, right? The question is at what stage. So do you know, from day one already start going regional, which some try to do just to get the next round of funding. Oh, I'm in Malaysia, Indonesia, I'm in 6 countries. I'm now a $20 million company, right? But the reality is that you're not executing, the metrics don't make sense, and you'll die sooner rather than later. And we have 1 or 2 companies in our portfolio like that, right? But then you've got those that, you know, concentrate on just, and I would suggest is concentrate on getting, winning in your market first, right? And making sure that you understand everything about the business and how it ticks in that one market. But then very quickly start figuring out, okay, well, how do I, because this is what investors want to see. They want to see, and in any country, right, you know, are you able to understand how to scale this business? And that's what they want to see, right? That you have that kind of mindset. Even if you're in China, you know, you want to know, okay, well, how are you going to scale that business? And you need some kind of plan. Of course, it's slightly easier in China, right? But out here, I see it as an advantage, right? And I think as a barrier to a lot of the European companies, no names mentioned, who want to come out and say, oh yeah, we'll take Southeast Asia by storm, we'll throw in a few McKinsey guys, and then we'll capture the entire market. Okay, you know where these guys are right now, right? They're selling off their companies like hotcakes. So, but it's because they don't understand the market. They don't understand the market. So that's sort of my point. I mean, it is important to demonstrate that you can scale. It is turn that barrier into a strength and very quickly understand what you're missing and look for skill sets that have done it before. Right, so that would be my sort of 2 cents.
I guess the last thing to add to that is you made a point that you asked the question, you may not be ready to move countries because you want to be in Singapore. So that's sort of something that investors also look at, because if different companies come to us, different founders come to us with different situations, and that's also something that we have to assess, because if we think that this product or this service needs to be grown in another country except for Singapore, we have to ask that question: are you ready to move there? Because that is the more appropriate market for you. So it's also a case of individual circumstances whether or not it works.
Well, obviously, Singapore is Southeast Asia, and if you're going to scale throughout the region, you know, any entrepreneur will go to where their next market is for temporarily, but you know, you literally have to go country by country by country to really dominate this entire market down here, which is very different than the big market. So I guess that was my point. Whereas, like, you know, it really encourages companies here to kind of find more scalable businesses such as marketplaces or aggregators, to where you only need a sales team on your own. You know, you don't need an office even, right? And I just feel like that's very limiting to what can be created.
Yeah, point noted. And I guess that's the inherent issues of dealing with Southeast Asia: language, geography, so on and so forth.
Hi, my name is Ivan. I run a peer-to-peer real estate startup. So obviously my question will be, if you're looking at having a real estate startup on the platform, what is it that you're looking at before you consider to invest?
This question is real estate. What are you doing? Are you doing like a property agent or landlord to tenant? Or are you talking about financing real estate properties?
No, landlord to tenant.
Okay. Well,
landlord to buy, to sell it, right, to buy it.
Well, the good thing is it's a very easily understood business model, and you have lots of precedents out there. So you're a property guru and iProperty and so on and so forth. So the question is, you have to make it much more. So right now it's not a. All you need to do is just spend 5 seconds, like what you just did, and tell us that's the thing, right? So then we ask you, right, what is so special about this? Why is it that you can have access to so many landlords, and why is it that you have access to so many potential tenants out there? That would be the question to you.
I think the main point is that you actually save money for the landlords or basically the users at the end of the day. So that is where the value proposition is, and we want to be able to save money for the users. Well, we are disintermediating the agent platform, but I mean that's something that's a different thing altogether. It's how we actually consider working together. Yeah. So that's where the value proposition is, and that's saving money for yourself if you're a property owner.
Yeah, so I guess it goes down to the point of everyone will say their product is better, faster, or cheaper.
Sure.
So it depends on how it actually materializes,
Yeah.
and whether or not actually when you put a landlord and a tenant together, whether or not they know how to negotiate and close the deal. And maybe that's where the value add of the middleman is.
Can we take this bit more later?
Yeah.
Any other last question? Two last questions.
Okay. So we all talk about B2C e-commerce, right? So Redmart is there, Lazada is there, Zalora is there. So what traction you guys are seeing in B2B e-commerce? B2B marketplace, B2B e-commerce, any client that any startup you're working with?
What are the traction for
B2B.
B2B marketplace?
Are you in a better position?
Yeah.
If you're not working, I'll pitch later.
Okay, yeah. So maybe later.
Yeah.
Again?
We're not seeing that many B2B marketplace or B2B startup.
So good for us, good for us. Okay.
Can I ask, because you all did mention that it's better to delay asking for investment as long as possible, but I wanted to ask because I got some conflicting advice. Basically what we did was we had reinvested some business profits before, and now we have some traction. We don't know when to start getting money, to start scaling our marketing and getting more customers. Because right now we are doing shameless things like, if you see our posters in the toilet, that's what we ask, shameless marketing at a lower cost. And the question is really, when do we start to go beyond that kind of hacking methods and go start scaling our growth more and asking for investment?
Last question.
Yeah, I'll try. I mean, so again, it's you know, there's so many factors, right? So there's competition. There's what is your competition doing? You know, what's your current market share? Can you afford to wait and continue your shameless toilet marketing, right? And is it working? And can you prove that it's working? So, you know, and continue to get traction. If that's working, hey, by all means, go to all the toilets, right, and create a new business model there. It's actually working. So then, right? So the question now is how well is it working? Right? What is the toilet delta, right? In terms of the metric there, right? So what's your ROT, right? And demonstrate that, right? But if you find that's too slow, right, and you're starting to lose market share, and new competitors are coming to the marketplace, and you know, they have better thing. But I mean, then you better start thinking about bringing investments to step up marketing, right? Because you need to get, it's all going after market share and demonstrating your business model, etc. And so that's hard to answer when, but those are some of the considerations to think about anyways like that.
So we will end the discussion here. If you have any more questions, we'll still be here for another half an hour. Please feel free to enjoy the wine and food. And again, thank you for coming. Thank you.
That's all right. It's okay. Okay, that's good.
Thank you.